Hello, and welcome to this short presentation. The subject of the presentation is to see how we can use ED-153 in the context of the new EC regulation 2017-373. First, we need to have a bit of background to understand where we were in 2009 when ED-153 was published. At that time, we were speaking about regulations like 1034 2011 and 1035 2011. There was a kind of zoom in for the software bits in another regulation, 482 2008. Within those regulations, we can find a notion of severity classes. Severity class 1 was about accidents, down to severity class 5, where there was no immediate impact on safety. That was very convenient to kind of classify the different severities of the occurrences. But since the 2nd of January 2020, we got rid of them. So basically now, within EU 2017-373, they're only speaking about harmful effect. And anybody might define another severity classification scheme, but then at the harmful effect level. So our problem is now we got rid of those severities, helping us to sort out the problem, what is the software assurance level for this particular piece of software. That being said, if we have a look now at 2017-373, we can't find anything about software inside the regulation itself. Everything has been moved into what they called acceptable means of compliance, also called soft law, and guidance material. So rather than saying, well, it's at the regulation level, they're saying it's at a lower level. But what is key for us to understand is the fact that it's very similar to the content of the 482/2008 regulation. So that's good news, because basically what we can say is, well, it's a nice evolution thanks to the feedback, the improvements that the service provider were able to raise to ESA, that we're reaching now a new version of this so-called regulation, but now it's in acceptable means of compliance and guidance material. So again, later, I will ask you to read this for probably using the pause function. So a few seconds for you to pause and then come back and start again the presentation. You may notice that, in fact, thanks to the new regulation, we are kind of splitting the world in two parts. The ones dealing with the operations, and the name is for them ATS, Air Traffic Service Providers, are one particular kind of service provider. And on the other side, all the others who are not really in touch with the aircraft. They are supporting the ATS people, and because they are non-ATS, their name is basically non-ATS service provider. That will be very important later when we will compare the two approaches proposed by the regulation, saying for the ATS people, you know about the risk. For the non-ATS people, no clue about the risk because you're just delivering a service. And this is very clear here in this AMC, because they're saying for the normal service provider, not the non-ATS service providers, basically there is a need you need to fulfill. And what they have in mind is the software has to behave as intended, with a level of confidence that is consistent with the need or the needs required by the application. On the other side, the ATS people, well, they do have to define the criticality. So for each and every piece of software, they have to decide how critical is this piece of software. Let's go further and go into the guidance material. And here you see that basically the notion of SWAL is one of the possible solutions to address this level of confidence, as they're saying. So here, between the lines, we can see that SWAL is one of the solutions, but let's take this one. Because further on, when you go into the guidance material, you will see what they call examples of existing industrial standards. And hopefully for us, there are two very interesting ones that we probably well know. And basically it's ED-109 and ED-153, ED-153 being the main subject of this presentation. So now we have a little bit of the context, and it's important maybe to see the difference of the requirements for on ATS people and the requirements on the non-ATS people. For the non-ATS people, as I said, there is no notion of risk. For the ATS, they will have to allocate an assurance level if they pick that as their way to demonstrate an acceptable level of confidence. So that being said, there is a specific set of requirements within the guidance material for the ATS saying you shall coordinate. You are the guys responsible for the full picture, or all the pieces of software that are contributing to the services that you are providing as an ATS provider. More information, ED decision, you have the number over there. If you have the PDF, click on the link and you will open the decision from the European Parliament. So let's go back to our favorite industrial standard. If you know a little bit about ED-153, it was published, by the way, in 2009, you know that somewhere you will find the matrix to allocate a software assurance level. And it's based on two dimensions. The first one is so-called effect severity. And if you remember, effect severity is gone because basically we got rid of 1035, 1034, 482, 2008. All these things are gone. We are only now speaking within the scope of 2017 373 about harmful effect. But could we invent something? Could we think about a way to still use this very effective, very nice solution to allocate a software assurance level? And that's a proposal I have. So basically, we know the effect severities were defined in a regulation that is now repealed. So we can't refer to this regulation anymore. So rather than doing this, what we will wonder is, based on the new way to present the risk here, ESA is saying, well, we are taking care of the harmful effects. Harmful effects are the things we want to avoid. All other things are so-called incidents. Yeah. But obviously, if we do mapping with the all severity classification scheme, now we can map the severity 1 nearly to the harmful effect. All the other severities will be kind of big box of all the incidents. So severity 2, 3, and 4 will be classified as incidents. Okay. Is that a good idea? Well, the problem is, keep in mind that if we don't have a standardized process to allocate a software assurance level, then it's killing the notion of assurance level. Because if you have different processes, you will end up with different results for the same conditions. And that means you can't use ED-153 anymore. So the notion of repeatability is very important. So when we are allocating a software assurance level, it shall be repeatable. And my dream, and in theory, to be very honest, just to be practical, it has to be the same process for everybody. Else, one country will end up with SWAL X, another SWAL Y, and then we can't compare the things. And it kills the notion of standard. That is not good, of course. We have to keep in mind that a lot of people, service providers, manufacturers, and also CAs, invest a lot of time and effort, so money, into setting up this wonderful SWAL solution. Why getting rid of it? So keep it alive would be my suggestion. But for that, probably we're going to have to tweak a little bit what we have today. There are different proposals to reuse kind of all severity classification scheme, and they're talking about incident classification scheme, extended severities classification scheme. Okay, fair enough. But if we go back to the presentation of ESA, they all saying that if there is something happening, it's an occurrence. So basically here, we will find an occurrence being having a harmful effect, having an effect, and it's just an incident, then you may classify the incident, and so on. To be closer also to the usual language of the people, the controllers, the ADCEP, the CNS people, and so on and so on, we have to keep that in mind because it makes them able to participate actively to the allocation process. And that is obviously something that we need to have. So my suggestion is, what about an occurrence classification scheme? Because we can't use the severity word anymore. It has another meaning in 2017 373. So occurrence is something negative out of our wonderful set of services. So let's pick occurrence. What does it mean? What does it mean in terms of allocation matrix? Well, Vincent, this is exactly what is in ED-153. Yes, that's the content. And look carefully. You see top the effect severity. Let's change that into occurrence severity. And obviously, we still need to define what are those severities, but we can kind of copy paste the severities as per 1035. And this could be the end of the story. Because in that case, if you replace the word severity by occurrence, you're fully compliant with the new regulation 2017-373. Is it the end? No. Let's dig into my dreams, if you don't mind. And I have a dream. Somebody said that before, I know. And my dream is to put an A at the end of, another typo, sorry for that, it's ED-153A. Because when we published it in 2009, obviously the standards that were the basis for ED-153 were the standards available in 2009. Now we have a new ED-109, the ED-109A. We do have a new version of 12207, 61508, and so on. So obviously, the world is keep changing. And hopefully, because we're adapting to our current needs and feedbacks of experience. So once again, going for ED-153A, possible path would be to say, well, the ED-153 at the beginning was based on 12207. Let's keep this base. But unfortunately, the new version of 12207 is, well, uses a different structure. Meaning, if we have a different structure, we won't be able to keep the same numbering scheme as today in ED-153. Also keep an eye on Annex A, which is a huge work, and it's keep changing because we're trying there to do the mapping with different standards. As I said, 12207, IEC 61508, ED-109A, and so on. It makes it easier for somebody using another standard than ED-153 to have it, let's say, out of the box. Fair, but they have to do it once and only once. Before closing, what I suggest to do would be to get rid, of course, in the new version of the references to old regulations. All the old regulations should be just out. We should also speak about outcomes or outputs of work products. So this is basically all the current standards are using the process described into different steps and producing something. And this something is always highlighted in a standard. We have also to think about make compliance demonstration as easy as possible. And for that, maybe provide metrics. There is no need for me of the chapter 8, which is about software safety folder, because the way you're organizing the information depends so much on the organization. So we shouldn't go that way. And also the Annex B about roles and responsibility scenarios. Well, fair enough, but I would move all these things in an annex, which is basically a frequently asked questions, where we're going to have roles and responsibilities, software safety folders, and also compliance management. And I think this is it. Thank you very much for listening. Don't hesitate to contact me. Would you have any question about the presentation? Thank you very much.